You barely visit anymore. Marriage should be your priority, not this silly career, Lydia snapped, her cold eyes boring into me. Milo shifted uncomfortably beside me, on the floral-patterned couch. Mom, Elise works hard. You don't have to be so hard on her. Lydia waved her hand dismissively. She needs to focus on her duties as a wife. When are you two going to start a family? I clenched my jaw, fighting the anger bubbling inside me. This wasn't the first time Lydia had made digs about my job and criticized me as Milo's wife. But today, on our rare joint day off, it stung more than usual. My career is important to me, I said evenly, proud of myself for not raising my voice. And we've discussed children. We'll have them when the time is right for us. Lydia's eyes narrowed. For you, you mean? For your convenience and schedule, typical modern woman always putting selfish desires first. That was it. We should get going, I said flatly, standing up. Milo opened his mouth, then closed it again, standing as well. Yes, run off. Par for the course these days, Lydia called after us. The drive back to our condo was silent. Milo kept glancing over at me, lips pursed, but I stared straight ahead, too angry to speak. How could he let his mother talk to me like that? When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom to be alone. A few minutes later, Milo poked his head in. Else, are you okay? I whirled around, my fury unleashed. No, I'm not okay. Your mother constantly belittles me and my career, and you just sit there and take it. Do you agree with her outdated, misogynistic views? He recoiled. What? No, of course not. She just has a certain way of speaking. She doesn't mean anything by it. I stared at him in disbelief. Doesn't mean anything by it? You can't be serious. She clearly thinks my job makes me a bad wife and that having a career means I'm selfish. She's just old-fashioned, Else. You know how she can be. He came over and put his hands on my shoulders. Don't let it bother you so much. I jerked away, unable to believe his nonchalance. My career was a huge part of who I was. How could he downplay his mother's words so easily? This has been building for years, I said, voice shaking slightly. She repeatedly criticizes and demeans me. I feel disrespected in my own marriage by my own husband. Milo's face fell. Els, I'm sorry. I never meant to make you feel that way. But it was too late for apologies. His flippant response to his mother's toxic behavior spoke volumes. I suddenly felt overwhelmingly alone. I can't keep living like this, I said quietly. We need to get counseling to work through these issues. If we can't get on the same page, I don't know if our marriage can survive. Milo paled, but I stood firm, my mind already spinning ahead to the next chapter of my life. The next morning, I was sifting through the mail when a letter from our bank caught my eye. Frowning, I opened it and froze. Our checking account was nearly empty. Milo, I called out, panic rising in my chest. Come here. He shuffled into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. What's up? Look at this, I said tersely, thrusting the bank statement at him. Our account is almost drained. What did you do? He scanned it and cringed. Ah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Meaning to talk to me? We're supposed to be partners, Milo. How could you fritter away our savings without consulting me? I didn't fritter them away, he protested. I had some unexpected expenses come up. Like what? You better start explaining yourself right now. He shifted uncomfortably. Well, you know my parents haven't been in the best health lately. They needed some help with medical bills. They needed help? So instead of having an adult conversation with me, you just took money? It was an emergency. I couldn't let them get behind or wreck their credit rating. That's not an excuse, I said through gritted teeth. You went behind my back and used our marital assets. That's financial betrayal. I was going to tell you, Milo said, raising his hands. I just wanted to handle it first. That's no justification. You're a liar, Milo. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. His eyes widened. Else, come on, you're overreacting. It's not that big a deal. I stared at him incredulously. Not a big deal? He was more worried about his own guilty conscience than my feelings. We're supposed to be partners, I said, voice breaking. But you're disrespecting me and undermining our marriage with this garbage. I'm your wife, not your doormat. Milo rolled his eyes. There you go again, being overdramatic and emotional. It's not as serious as you're making it. That was it. I'd had enough of his dismissive, condescending attitude. I balled my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. You clearly don't value me, our marriage, or our finances, I spat. If you can't be an equal partner and show me basic respect, then I don't know what we're even doing here. Something flickered in Milo's eyes then. Was it shame? Hurt? I found I didn't care anymore. This callous financial betrayal was just one more blow after his mother's hurtful words. I was done being mistreated. I'm going to stay with Angela for a few days, I said, voice icy calm. Maybe some time apart will give you perspective. I stormed past him, grabbing my purse and keys. At the door, I turned back. I gave you my ultimatum yesterday. Get your act together, Milo. Seek counseling or be prepared to lose me. This behavior ends now. The door slammed behind me with a note of finality. As I drove away, tears blurring my vision, part of me already knew his answer. When I returned home from Angela's a few days later, Milo was waiting for me in the living room. He leapt up from the couch when I walked in. Els, thank God you're back. I've been so worried. He moved to hug me, but I stepped back, arms folded across my chest. I needed some space to think, I said flatly. Milo's face fell. I get it. I really screwed up with the money stuff. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't good enough this time, Milo. Your actions have consequences. You're right, he said, nodding vigorously. I know I disrespected you, our marriage, everything. It won't happen again, I swear. That remains to be seen, I replied, unmoved. I've lost faith in a lot of your promises. Milo looked stricken. Els, please, tell me what I can do to fix this. I'll do anything. I took a deep breath. I want us to go to marriage counseling. Immediately, he paled. Counseling? Isn't that a bit extreme? No, it's not extreme, I exploded. We're at a breaking point here, Milo. I've put up with a lot. Your mother's constant belittling, your betrayal of my trust regarding our finances. If you want to save our marriage, we need professional help to work through these issues. Milo gaped at me. Els, come on. Do we really need to drag some stranger into our business? I stared at him, dumbfounded by his resistance. Didn't he understand how serious this was? Yes, we really do need counseling, I said in a measured tone. It's that or risk losing me for good. I'm deadly serious about this. The hurt flashed across his face again. You're talking about divorce? I'm saying our marriage is on the line here. We've tried the easy way, the disrespect, the loss of trust. None of that has gotten through to you. So yes, if counseling doesn't work, then we may be headed towards divorce. That's just the cold, hard truth. Milo looked completely poleaxed. In that moment, I realized just how checked out he'd become, how little he valued or prioritized me in our relationship. The fact that divorce was shocking to him spoke volumes. I love you, Els, he said, voice catching. I don't want to lose you. For the first time in a long while, I saw sincerity in his eyes, but underneath was an undercurrent of fear. Fear of change, of sacrifice, of loss. Not love. Then we go to counseling. Period, I replied. Take it or leave it. I held his gaze, not backing down an inch. He finally nodded slowly. Okay, anything you want, I'll do it. But doubts swirled in my mind as I watched him turn away, head in his hands. His actions and choices going forward would determine everything. Meanwhile, part of me had already come to terms with where this might lead. A few weeks later, Milo and I were having breakfast when the doorbell rang. I frowned and went to answer it. On the doorstep stood Lydia and George, Milo's parents, suitcases in hand. Oh good, you're home, Lydia said, brushing past me into the condo. We're moving in for a while. I stood there, dumbfounded. Excuse me, moving in? George shuffled by as well, grunting a brief hello. Milo appeared behind me. Mom? Dad? What's going on here? We've had some health issues come up, Lydia explained, already unpacking her things. We can't stay in our place for the time being. For how long? And why didn't you give us any notice? This isn't okay, I said, trying to stay calm. Lydia barely glanced at me. Don't be so dramatic, Elise. It's only temporary, while we get our affairs in order. Right, Milo? She turned her cold gaze to her son. Milo looked cornered. Well, I knew they needed help, but I didn't know the full extent until this morning. You knew? I interrupted. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? Milo held up his hands. I was going to bring it up. Mom just sprung it on me, too. Like hell you were, Lydia snapped. Stop lying to appease your wife. You knew we couldn't stay on our own. Thank goodness you married a woman with such a spacious home and income to support us. The way she said support us made my skin crawl. I turned to Milo, furious. Is this true? Were you planning this without consulting me? To my horror, he wouldn't meet my eyes. The realization washed over me. He and his mother had once again gone behind my back. "You know we've been having health problems," George piped up gruffly from the hallway. "Don't be so selfish and inflexible." "Selfish?" I exploded. "Bringing house guests into our home without notice or consent is the height of disrespect. This is a boundary violation," Lydia tutted. "Don't be so overdramatic, Elise. We're family." "That's exactly the problem," I shot back. "You don't treat me like family. You undermine and insult me constantly, and Milo just enables it." Milo still wouldn't look at me. He was paralyzed, torn between his wife and his toxic parents. "Well, if this living situation is such a hardship for you, you know where the door is," Lydia said, words dripping with venom. "Milo can make the decision that puts his family first." In that moment, I saw the truth with terrible clarity. Milo's ultimate loyalties still lay with his parents, no matter their behavior. My wishes, my boundaries meant nothing to them. Tears stung my eyes as I stared at my husband's cowardly, downcast face. It was over. I was done being disrespected and trampled on. Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, letting it slam behind me. I made it to my car before the sobs overcame me. Through the blur of tears, I knew I had been a fool. Milo's controlling mother had won. I had no choice left. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed the number for a divorce lawyer. Over the next couple of weeks, I moved out of the condo and into a studio apartment, attempting to rebuild my shattered life. I went through the motions at work and tried to block out the pain and anger. My mind kept returning to Milo moving his parents in without my consent. It was a profound breach of trust, and there had to be more to it. He couldn't be that oblivious and controlled by his mother, could he? One night, I was going through some old files and came across our joint banking statements from the past year. Frowning, I pulled out a pen and paper and started tallying up some numbers. 2 hours later, I slumped back in my chair, staring at the totals in horror. It all made sense now. Milo had been funneling money from our accounts to his parents in secret for months. Thousands upon thousands of dollars frittered away under the guise of medical emergencies and essential expenses. I felt sick to my stomach. Not only had Milo violated my trust by moving his parents in, he had been systemically draining our finances to support them behind my back. It was a level of deception I couldn't have imagined. The next morning, I stormed up to Milo's office at the school, heart pounding. His face fell when he saw me. "Else, what's going on?" "This," I spat, shoving the accounting notes at him. "This is what's going on." Milo scanned the papers and visibly paled. "Oh, God! Oh, God is right," I exploded. "How could you do this, secretly siphoning our money for over a year? Do you have any idea the level of betrayal here?" "Else, I was going to tell you. I swear, I just hated disappointing you." "This is so far beyond disappointment." I was shaking with rage. "You've been lying to me for months, using joint marital assets to fund your parents' lives. It's financial infidelity." Milo hung his head. "I know. It spiraled out of control before I could fix it." "Spiraled?" I laughed bitterly. "You made the choice to deceive me repeatedly. I just can't believe you'd stoop this low." "Please. You have to understand. They really did have emergencies and nowhere else to turn." "Don't give me that." I cut him off. "This is about your inability to set boundaries with your toxic, manipulative mother. Always has been." Milo looked up, shame and hurt warring on his face. I almost felt bad for a moment until I remembered he had brought this upon himself. "I can't be with someone who repeatedly violates my trust and boundaries," I said, my voice shaking. "Someone who values his parents' whims above his own wife's needs and well-being. It's over, Milo." The words hung in the air. Deep down, part of me realized I'd already made my choice. "Else, no, please." Milo reached for me, but I jerked away. "It's done," I said flatly. "I'll have my lawyer begin divorce proceedings." Milo let out a soft sob, but I refused to give in to sentiment. He had made his choices, and there were consequences. I turned and walked out, holding my head high. There was no more energy left for me to waste on him and his poisonous family. From here on out, I needed to focus on myself. As I got in my car, I took a deep, shuddering breath. A strange sense of calm came over me. I was free. A few weeks after I told Milo I was divorcing him, I received a frantic call from Angela. "Elise, you have to get over here right now. It's an emergency." My heart leapt into my throat. "What's going on? Are you okay?" Just come quick. It's about Milo and his family. I'll explain when you arrive. I raced over to Angela's, cursing traffic the whole way. When I burst through her door, she was pacing anxiously. Thank God you're here. Lydia and George showed up with all their crap, demanding to stay with me. What? I stared at her, aghast. Why on earth would they come to you? They got kicked out of your place. Milo said he can't afford to keep supporting them anymore after the divorce expenses. I seethed, furious that Milo and his parents still felt entitled to bleed me dry. Of course they want to mooch off someone else. Typical. I turned them away, obviously, Angela went on. But Lydia started screaming and yelling, making all these wild accusations. She claimed you pushed Milo into divorce so you could take all his money and cut them off completely. My jaw dropped. That's insane. She's delusional. I'm divorcing Milo because of his lies and disrespect, not money. I know, Angela soothed, but she's spiraling, and I was worried she'd do something rash. So I told them to come here to hash it out with you directly. Just then, the doorbell rang. Angela gave me an apologetic look as Lydia's shrill voice came through the door. Open up! We know the deceiver is here! I steeled myself and went to the door, Angela behind me. Flinging it open, I came face to face with Milo, Lydia, and George. Lydia's face was twisted in rage. You wretched woman, she spat. What have you done to my son? Mom, please, Milo hissed. But she brushed him off. You've poisoned his mind and destroyed his life, you gold-digging witch. Now you're using divorce to steal from us. I recoiled at her vitriol, but forced myself to stand firm. That is categorically false. Your son was the one repeatedly lying and stealing from our marital assets to fund your lifestyle. I had no choice but to protect myself. Lies, she screamed. You manipulated and trapped him. He's penniless because of you. He's penniless because he drained our finances to give you money behind my back for over a year. I shot back. Your toxic control forced him to violate my boundaries repeatedly. Lydia laughed, a grating cackle. So you admit he valued us over you? As he should. You're nothing but a selfish harpy. That was it. I'd had enough of her venom. If what you say is true, if Milo truly valued you over me as his wife, then how pathetic is that? My words hung in the air. Milo looked stricken but stayed silent, cowed. George just grunted, arms folded. You're a cancer, Lydia, I went on, voice shaking with fury. And Milo let you infest and destroy our marriage so he could keep appeasing you. It's sick. I stared at my soon-to-be ex-husband, filled with a maelstrom of emotions. But underneath it all was pity. I'm divorcing a mama's boy too weak to stand up for himself or his wife, I said quietly. How sad for you both. Lydia's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I had deflated her bluster. Now get out, Angela interjected firmly. You're not welcome here. She closed the door in their stunned faces. I sank down onto a chair, emotionally drained. As the shouts started up outside, I realized I was finally, truly free. The toxic grip had been severed. It was time to reclaim my life. As I sat with Angela that day, watching Lydia and Milo through the window as they cursed and ranted, something shifted inside me. Their vitriol no longer had the same sting. I felt numb, detached. After they finally stormed off, Angela turned to me with a worried look. Are you okay? I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I took a deep breath and slowly let it out. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Angela searched my face, confused. What do you mean? I mean I'm done letting them have power over me. That chapter of my life is closed. I thought for a moment. In fact, I'm not going to just passively end things with Milo. I'm taking control. Angela sat back, surprised. Taking control how? By getting justice. I stood up and began pacing, energy coursing through me. Milo systematically depleted our marital assets for over a year, giving that money to his vile parents behind my back. It was illegal and unethical on multiple levels. Angela nodded slowly, catching my meaning. So you're going to go after them, legally and financially? Absolutely. I'm consulting lawyers immediately to explore all my options. I have the evidence of his fraud and deception. He and his parents are going to face consequences. A grim smile crossed my face as a plan began to form. In fact, I may handle things a bit more creatively than just the legal angle. What are you thinking? Angela asked warily. Milo and Lydia have always dismissed me as some inconvenient, emotional modern woman who didn't know her proper submissive place, I explained. They underestimated me. I paused, picturing both their smug, sneering faces. I'm going to make them realize the full extent of exactly what kind of strong, capable woman I am. I'm going to utterly dismantle their world and status, just as they tried to do to me. Angela's eyebrows shot up. Damn, girl, you sound like a woman on a warpath. Damn right, I replied, eyes flashing. They messed with the wrong modern woman. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in research and planning. I met with a lawyer well-versed in financial crimes and divorce, laying out the full scope of Milo's betrayal with documentation. We began gathering additional evidence of the money trail, tracing the funds he had diverted to his parents over the past year. The lawyer assured me we had enough for criminal and civil charges of fraud, misappropriation of marital assets, and more. But I didn't stop there. I consulted a private investigator to dig deeper into Milo and Lydia's backgrounds and activities. I wanted to expose every shady financial dealing, every personal and reputational skeleton they tried so hard to hide. The investigator turned up a host of illicit activities from Lydia's past: tax evasion, unpaid debts galore, even a messy sex scandal that had been neatly swept under the rug. It confirmed my instinct that her holier-than-thou facade hid monstrous hypocrisy and moral failings. As the puzzle pieces came together, I began to set my plan in motion. There would be 3 stages. First, I would go scorched earth legally and financially, draining Milo and his parents of every last ill-gotten resource. Second, I would systematically expose and publicize Lydia's sordid history and criminal activities, completely dismantling her pedestal in the community. Finally, I would make an example of Milo to ensure full accountability. With each step planned out, I felt a sense of strength and purpose I hadn't experienced since my life with Milo unraveled. I was in control now. And as for sentiment, there was none left. It was time to repay them with the same ruthless selfishness they had shown me. Only then would justice be served. About 6 months after my fateful confrontation with Lydia and Milo, I was putting the final touches on my plan. It was time to strike. I sent out formal invitations to Milo, Lydia, George, and a handful of their closest friends and relatives, requesting their presence for a family gathering at my place. They would be expecting some sort of attempt at reconciliation. Little did they know. The appointed evening arrived, and my guests began filtering in, looking confused and annoyed. Lydia swept in last, chin high, glaring around imperiously. "Well, what is the meaning of this charade?" she demanded when she spotted me. I smiled thinly. "Please, everyone take a seat. I have an announcement to make." Mutterings filled the room as they grudgingly sat. Milo kept shooting me panicked looks, terrified of a scene, no doubt. Once they settled, I began to speak. "Friends, family, I've gathered you all here today to share some important news and set the record straight on a few matters." I paused, taking in their wary faces. Lydia was scowling. "Many of you know that my marriage has dissolved over the past year. What you may not realize is the scale and severity of the betrayal and damage done." I looked directly at Milo, who shrank under my gaze. "My husband systematically depleted our joint marital assets and finances over many months, funneling thousands upon thousands to support his parents' lifestyle and expenses without my knowledge or consent." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Lydia shot Milo a venomous look. "It was discovered," I went on, "that he fraudulently misused our funds out of an unwillingness to cut off his parents' constant demands for financial support. The extent of the deception is staggering." I shook my head slowly. The trust, respect, and sanctity of marriage was completely violated, and so decisive action had to be taken. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a manila envelope. "As of today, I have officially filed both criminal fraud charges and a civil lawsuit against my former husband, Milo. A portion of all future earnings and assets will be garnished to compensate for the damages." Milo's head snapped up, eyes wild. "You can't be serious!" But I pressed on. "Additionally, I have filed civil liability claims against both Lydia and George for their role in encouraging and facilitating this misconduct." My voice strengthened. The bright lights of legal and financial ruin will now be shone in their faces. No stone will be left unturned. All misdeeds and shady dealings will be completely exposed. Lydia finally found her voice. "You lying snake! You can't do this. I won't allow it." I laughed coldly. "You have no power here anymore, Lydia. Your reign of abuse and manipulation is over." Reaching into my bag again, I pulled out a sheaf of documents. In fact, let's go ahead and begin the exposure right now, shall we? I started detailing Lydia's long history of criminal transgressions, tax evasion, insurance fraud, illegal offshore accounts, shady business dealings, even her little sex scandal that she thought stayed buried. Her face ashen, Lydia gaped at me as I mercilessly laid out the bitter, ugly truth. Around the room, shock and revulsion rippled through the guests, utterly dismantling the vain, holier-than-thou facade she had carefully constructed over the years, showing the world the real Lydia, a grasping, immoral hypocrite. She had no one to blame but herself. I finally fell silent. Lydia could only whimper denials through trembling lips. Looking around the room, I saw the dawning horror and disgust on every face, even Milo's. Her house of lies and illusions was crumbling. This was my revenge, my justice. They had underestimated me at every turn, and now the tables were turned. You brought this upon yourselves, I said quietly. You chose to make me your enemy, and you have no one to blame but yourselves.